Yes, you.
I just texted him about 15 minutes.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
All right, it's 9 o'clock and we can get started. We're going to begin with a special call meeting. The president, with the chair's concurrence, has asked to convene a special meeting. Notice of that meeting has been provided. So I will ask Regent Brinkley if he will call the roll.
Regent Baker. Present. Regent Ball.
Here.
Regent Brinkley. Present. Regent Ernst. Present. Regent Harris. Present. Vice Chair Higdon.
Present.
Regent Henson.
Present.
Chair Johnson.
Present.
Regent McKinney. Present. Regent Nichols.
Here.
Regent Porter. Present.
We'll wait just a minute and see if we can.
Yes. If you'll entertain a few seconds, see if we can get the others connected.
I will. It looks like
Regent Nichols.
his
He's muted.
is on.
Here. Can you hear me? You're muted.
Regent Nichols, if you can hear me and you're present, will you give me a thumbs up? Thank you.
All right, we'll give it just a little bit longer.
Regent Ball, will you unmute your microphone briefly and let me know that you're on the call?
Okay, I'm here. Can you hear me? Hello?
You go over.
She is talking.
I
Yeah.
am talking.
It says so. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Regent Ball, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Are you all able, can you hear me,
I'll entertain
George?
any of the chairs.
Well, I think we can proceed, and then Dr. Capps, if we are able to hook. You have a quorum. We have a quorum, but if we can hook her up, then she counts.
Mr. Chair, we have 10 regents present representing quorum.
Oops.
That's us.
Okay, I will start with the first action item that's part of this special call meeting, the naming request for the WKU facility. It is set forth in action item EX1. Oh, there's, then we now have 11.
They can hear each other, but they can't hear us.
They can't hear us.
That's true. I can hear you. George, I can hear them.
Yeah, yes, and I can hear them too.
So,
So if Amanda, can you come up here and make a presentation to us on this issue, please?
Good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to be here today to seek approval for 3 new philanthropic naming opportunities for the new golf facility and athletics. First is for the WKU facility to be named the Philip Hatchett Golf Facility in recognition of his fundraising efforts for the facility as well as in memory of his coaching career at WKU. The Craig Family Putting Green in recognition of a gift from Matthew Craig and his family. And finally, the Shirley Family Club Repair Station, which is in recognition of a gift from Kyle Shirley and his family. Philip Hatchett of Russellville, Kentucky died on Sunday, June 17, 2018. He was a WKU alumnus and a 4-year letterman for the WKU men's golf program. He spent 8 years as head coach of the program and led a resurgence since taking over the team in 2010. Under his leadership, the program recorded its highest conference finish since 2010 during the 2017 and 18 golf season. This philanthropic request is recommended in recognition of Coach Hatchett's legacy of the program and his impact on hundreds of golf-inspired youth in this community. His service and contributions to WKU make this a very fitting tribute. Matthew Craig of Naples, Florida is a 1995 WKU alumnus and received a Bachelor of Science in Architectural Technology. He is president and CEO of MHK Architectural Planning, LLC. And finally, Kyle Shirley of Bowling Green, Kentucky is owner of Shirley Realty Group, LLC. Athletics will cover the costs of all the signage for the building and the designated rooms.
Todd, do you have anything please you'd like to say?
Thank you. Thanks, Amanda. Amanda laid that out really well, but what I would just quickly say about Philip Hatchett is he was WKU to the core. Graduated here in 1985. Was actually Kenny Perry's roommate on the golf team, 4-year letterman. But we need more people in the world like Philip Hatchett. And I don't say that's not hyperbole. He was our head coach for 8 years. Had one of the lowest budgets of any of our sports programs. But if you were around him, you would think he had the highest budget. He was always positive, always upbeat, definitely a glass is half full person, would always greet you with a nice firm handshake, just an outstanding individual in every respect. Through all of that, he had a vision of having a golf facility and did a lot of fundraising on his own while he was here. Unfortunately, he's not here for this moment, passing, as you said, Amanda, in June of 2018. But we were able to continue the fundraising after his passing. It's all private money. And it's something I know he would be very proud of, and we just feel it's most appropriate to name it.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a comment if I could to follow up on this. I did not know Philip well, but I knew him, and I'm certainly aware of the impact that he had on a lot of young people, including one of the golfers from Glasgow who's currently on the team. He was a father figure to a lot of them, but 2 days after his death, I received in the mail from him. I had purchased a Western Kentucky University golf bag because I wanted to have a golf bag with WKU on it. And anyway, 2 days after his death, I got this thing in the mail, which was a little unsettling. But he said, "I hope you enjoy your WKU golf bag. We are proud to know you will be carrying us everywhere you go, play this summer and beyond. Thank you for all you do for us in athletics. Exciting times are ahead. Go Dogs." That's the kind of guy he was.
Would anybody else like to comment before I call for a motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
That's a motion by Regent Dale. Do I hear a second? Second. Any discussion, comments, or questions? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Item number 2. I am going to turn it over to Regent Brinkley regarding the bylaws, to the bylaws in accordance with Article 6. I'm 5, 6, 7. So, Regent Brinkley.
Mr. Chair, Regents, an ad hoc committee was named last year that included 5 regents, including Stephen Mayer, that when his time ran, he was replaced by Will, and we have worked back and forth for some time now on a solution to amending the bylaws to be appropriate with the needs of the regents and the new president. We think recently that we have come to a solution that will enable us to modify policy as needed as it relates to the president. And I think that will give us more flexibility. And the proposed amendment that's going to be presented is in compliance with Section 1 of Article 7 of the bylaws. If this amendment is approved and adopted following the first and second reading, first reading being today, the intent of the board is to maintain language now contained in Section 1A and 1C of Article 6 in a separate written policy, and we would ask the chair to appoint an ad hoc committee to develop new and revised written policy related to the authority of the president and rules and regulations governing officers, agents, and employees of the university in compliance with KRS 164.350(2), subject to subsequent approval and adoption upon approval of a simple majority of the board. The ad hoc committee is in agreement of this presentation, and all members of that committee have been given this information and acknowledged their participation with it. The motion that would need to be read, I need to present that. It's my understanding.
Yeah, I think, and Dr. Kevin, correct me, I think he needs to read the amendment for first reading. The motion is to amend the bylaws of the Board of Regents, Western Kentucky University, as amended, approved January 20th, 2012 by, number 1, deleting sections 1A and 1C of Article 6 in their entirety. Number 2, amending sections 1B and 1D of Article 6. And number 3, inserting new sections 1A and 1C of Article 6 to read as follows. Article 6. Responsibilities of the president. The president of the university is appointed by the Board of Regents and serves at the pleasure of the board. The president is the chief executive and academic officer of the university and has direct charge of and is responsible to the board for the operation of the university. The president shall submit to the board in writing an annual report on the condition of the university. Paragraph A. In compliance with and pursuant to KRS 164.350, Section 2, the board shall adopt and amend from time to time as appropriate separate written rules, regulations, and policies relating to the governance of officers, agents, and employees of the university. B. The president is hereby designated as the official spokesperson and representative of the university. As the university's designated representative, the president is delegated to the general authority to act. The president is delegated the general authority to act on behalf of the university and Board of Regents. C. The general authority granted to the president may be further subject to separate written rules, regulations, and policies authorized by the board from time to time pursuant to the authority of KRS 164.350. 2 in Section 1A of Article 6 of the bylaws, which may be amended from time to time as appropriate and at the discretion of the board. D. The president may designate another university officer or employee to exercise in whole or in part the authority provided to the president herein, or in separate written policies provided that the president shall be responsible for the actions of his/her designee. I would move that it be adopted as the first reading. Do I hear a second to that motion?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second, and the floor is open for discussion. This is, let me rephrase, a first reading. That's what the motion is from Regent Brinkley. As a first reading, it cannot be approved until the next duly called meeting, which would be in December of this year, at which time it will require 2/3 of the board approval. I believe we can move it forward on a simple vote, can we not, Dr. Gibbs? That's right. So anyway, that's the motion. Any discussion, any comment, any questions? Hearing none, I'll then call for a vote on the motion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The first reading of the proposed amendment is approved. I will now state that we will put this on the agenda for the December 2019 meeting. There is no other business since this is a special meeting. And at this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Hey.
All opposed? And so the special meeting is hereby adjourned. Okay, I guess we can move straight into the committee meetings. And the. Bear with me. Okay, we're now into the committee meetings, and the first committee meeting will be Finance and Budget Committee. But before we get to that, I'd like to ask a favor. Regent Bell, Regent Henson. Regent Henson may need to leave early. Do you mind if I move the Student Affairs Committee slightly ahead of you? Does anybody have an objection to that at all?
No.
Consent. So we'll proceed. Regent.
First action item on the agenda is FB1, acceptance of the auditor's report. This will be ended June 30th, 2019. Do I hear a motion? to accept the auditor?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Who'd you second?
Oh, I bet you George and Linda did.
Oh,
We just
okay.
can't hear.
There he is. Okay, there he is.
Yeah, there we go, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
There we go. Okay.
And I don't know what to think.
Yeah, I'm supposed to have a PowerPoint, I believe, pull up. So I'm gonna say a few comments, and the auditor is here with us, before we get to, the auditor. So, anyway, let me just start by saying, it was a clean audit, and qualified opinion, that's the best we can get. No audit findings. The good news from the financial statements is our liquidity improved by 18 million. Net assets from operations improved 11 million. And a huge thank you to Mr. Jim Cummings and the accounting staff. So I'll turn it over to our auditor. Thank you.
Good morning. Glad to be here this morning. My name is Brad Shelley. I am Managing Director at Crow, a public accounting firm. We've been auditing the university for a number of years now. This is my probably 5th or 6th year involved with the university, the first year as the signing executive. So glad to be here. Put together a few slides to go through today to walk through the audit process. And then this is always one of the favorite times for everyone to listen to the audit and the results from this. So there we go. So first, just wanted to start going through what some of the scope of the services are, the deliverables that we provide, and what you have with you today. So the audit report of the university's financial statements obviously is the main thing that we are looking at and providing an opinion on. We also provide an opinion as it relates to the single audit or uniform guidance report. So that is related to your federal expenditures, and it's a report that we issue every year. We also issue a required auditor communication letter, or what's referred to as a SAS 114 letter, and we'll touch on some of the highlights of that later as well. Then two things that are specific to the Commonwealth of Kentucky: the House Bill 622 letter and the lease law compliance report. Both of those, again, are reports we provide every year, just ensuring compliance in both of those areas. And then the last two items here I listed on here, we do not present at this meeting, we'll present later, which is audit reports for the TV and radio stations, and also the NCAA agreed upon procedures that is a required procedure each year. We'll be completing that testing in the upcoming month or so, and then providing those results at a later meeting. Just as a high-level overview, here are some of the items that we're looking at as far as the audit process. So each year, the audit process is very similar in many ways, but we also have to make sure we're taking a clean look at it each year and really assessing some of these things. So some of the things we look at, what is the role of the committee and the board of regents? We look at the different concepts related to risk, and so we're always assessing the risk each year. That's a process that we go through at the beginning stages and then throughout the audit process where we're assessing to determine if anything has changed. That drives what our materiality is and a level of detail that we go into in our audit testing procedures. We're also looking at internal controls, how strong those controls are, where you have controls or where you don't have controls, and then making again decisions based on those risks and how we want to proceed with our testing. And then looking at the monthly and yearly financial reporting and how that process works. The result is our financial statement and the compliance audits we talked about, which includes highlights, MD&A section, any management recommendations. So we're required to communicate any internal control deficiencies of a significant deficiency or material weakness level in writing. As we get through here, we did not have any of those to communicate. So from that perspective, very clean from an internal control standpoint based on our testing. And then any other auditor communications. And again, we'll touch on that in a minute. A few, this didn't come through very well for some reason. I want to provide a little bit of overview on the financial statements, just touch on some of the highlights. So again, this includes the audited financial statements that you have, include the university, obviously, but also includes the research foundation as a blended component unit, which during FY19, there really wasn't any activity, but it's still included as a blended component unit. It also includes the WKU Foundation, Student Life Foundation, College Heights Foundation. Each of those are considered a discretely presented component unit, which really probably doesn't mean a whole lot to you, other than those are specifically included in the financial statements and balances for those individual entities. Whereas the Research Foundation is just that blended together with universities. So if you can kind of tell here before it got smushed together, this gives you a high-level overview of your statement of revenues, expenses, changes in that position or income statement for the 3 previous years. So as you can see there, the operating revenues have decreased, which probably isn't a real surprise, but I think the key thing here is the operating expenses have also decreased at an even greater pace, which has helped reduce that operating loss. And again, this is the way the standard government required presentation is. You're always going to have an operating loss there because that doesn't include any kind of additional subsidy or state money that you're receiving. And all of that is in that net non-operating revenues and expenses that you see there for fiscal year 19 of 129.7 million. So it takes you to a gain or loss before any capital contributions, and those are split out because capital contributions, as you know, can vary each year depending on what projects you have going on, and so those are split out separately. So if you look at that gain or loss before capital contributions, you'll see for the most recent year that we audited FY19, that was a positive $38.7 million. The prior year it was a positive $2 million, and in the 2 years ago, FY17 was a negative $39.1 million. So you shifted from a negative $39 million to a positive $38 million. So obviously some good things there. Some of the measures that you've taken have had an impact there. The other thing I want to point out, though, that part of that is, and this is where some of the fluctuations can also happen, you know, potentially in a negative standpoint in the future, is split out there the pension and OPEB income or expense. So as you may recall from previous presentations, a few years ago, the accounting requirements changed as it relates to OPEB and pension. and how that's recorded. And so now you have a large liability on your balance sheet for that. The changes in assumptions, discount rates, a lot of things that you can't really control have an impact that flows through your income statement. So that's what I tried to pull out here is this year was actually a positive from a pension OPEB standpoint to where you had income $36 million, where in previous years you had a lower amount or a loss. And again, that could change up or down in the future, really with nothing to do with your decisions or anything that's happening at the university level. That's at the Commonwealth level and with those plans and with discount rates. So just another thing to keep in mind there. From a balance sheet or a statement of net position standpoint, you can see here assets in the far left column have decreased slightly year over year each year, but also at the same time liabilities and deferred inflows have decreased similarly. And so what you end up with is on the far right column here, the net position, and this is I think what was referred to by Susan. You're seeing the net position last year in FY18 was a negative almost $110 million. This year is down to a negative $53 million. So you're seeing a positive swing there. And again, just as a reminder, this is primarily due to the way that OPEB and the pension is now recorded. Those liabilities came on. If you didn't have those liabilities, you'd be in the positives from a net position standpoint. So while it looks a little alarming, it's really the reality for a lot of government agencies is they're now in this negative position until those plans can be better funded.
Right, I know what I'm saying.
Yes.
It's pretty common across all institutions.
All
Yeah.
yes, all universities and at that level. As far as other auditor communications, again, I mentioned we've had some required communications that we have to do. This is just laying that out there, our responsibility as auditors under both the audit standards and the government auditing standards as a public university. We include in that SAS 114 letter the significant accounting policies, auditor judgments. Again, the important thing here at the bottom, no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls reported. So that's a positive thing to take away from this. And then here, the other positive to take away is there were no corrected misstatements. So those would be anything that audit adjustments that we found or misstatements that we found posted. There were none of those. And then there were none that we found that were waived by management that were maybe below materiality. So from that standpoint, very clean. That's not necessarily a common thing to have a clean report with no audit adjustments. So definitely something that the finance team should be proud of. As far as the other communications here, really none of these things. So no significant difficulties or disagreements, anything of that nature to report. Sorry, last thing here, just briefly, this may or may not mean anything to you. There are a couple of government accounting standards changes that will be coming down the road in the next couple of years. The first one, GASB 84 fiduciary activities, where this will potentially impact a lot of universities across the country may start seeing some of the different student activity funds, some smaller type of funds that are maybe part of the university, but it will now be split out as a fiduciary fund. So you'll see it actually separate on the financial statements rather than kind of buried in with the university. That'll be something that we will be looking with the accounting team on and looking through a lot of those different funds to figure out which of those would qualify as a fiduciary fund and which do not. The other aspect is really more if you had your own pension or OPEB plans, that's where you would see these come on as a fiduciary fund. But I think for most part, the universities where you're going to see some student activity funds being considered a fiduciary fund now. And that'll be for next year. 2 years from now will be GASB 87, the leases. And this really at a high level viewpoint, what this is going to do is bring any lease or agreements that are considered close to a lease, have components of a lease. Those will all be recorded now on your balance sheet, both as essentially an asset and a liability, similar to the way you might see a capital lease. So there really won't be very many. There's a few exclusions from that that'll still be treated similar to an operating lease where it's just expense as it's paid. But for the most part, you're going to see a larger number from an asset and a liability standpoint coming on the books in 2 years. Again, not expect to have any kind of net impact, but you will see some pretty significant changes there on that balance sheet. And it'll be a significant amount of work for the accounting and finance folks to gather all those agreements, get all that information, figure out that adjustment that needs to be made, and then maintain that information going forward. And so that'll be something we will be talking with the team about and how to approach that. So that was everything that I had. If anyone has any questions, happy to answer those.
Okay, I do have one question on the lease reporting. Is that treated as a long-term liability, and then reported the current portion of it for the year paid?
No, I don't believe so. And it's because what you're going to see probably is not really a liability per se. It'll be in that liabilities category. It'll be probably similar to a deferred inflow resources. So it'll be in the liability side, but no, I don't think it'll be separated out into a current long-term version. Yes. Yeah, everything is expected. I don't want to say 100% because there could be some certain transaction or lease that doesn't net out, but everything is generally expected to wash to zero net effect, both from an asset and liability standpoint, and nothing really running through the income statement any more than it would any other year.
Can you elaborate a little bit, capital contributions and other, what is all this category?
So that is generally any grant funding or other contributions that you get that are specific to capital projects. I'd have to look through the details to figure out what exactly all was included this year versus the other years, but that at a high level that's what you see through there. Those are federal contributions, other funding, or contributions, donations for capital projects that you're seeing put on it. And that's, again, why I said those are split out separately, because those can ebb and flow with whatever you have going on from a capital.
All right. Any other questions or discussions? All right, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye or put a thumbs up. All right.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. All right, the next item is FB2, the table of personnel actions, which is several pages in your board packet. I have a motion to second.
Second.
All right. You have anything to say about this? Okay. And does anybody have any questions or discussion during the first line? Hearing none. We gotta wait for them to come back up.
There we go.
Oh, do you have a presentation mic on?
No.
Okay.
I'd like to ask a question. How come this isn't done like an annual basis every time we have a meeting? It's the same thing over and over. Just curious. When I run our company, we give our bonuses and raises all at the same time. I'm just always amazed that we go through this every time we have a meeting. I was just curious.
I think you could, I mean, if
it were the board's wish, we could hold that for beginning of fiscal year, end of fiscal year. I think it's just been the way in which we've done business. There are consulting contracts, bonuses often paid during the course of a year. I think if it were the board's desire, we could compile that into a single report that came once per year and be done with it that way.
Meant no offense.
No.
I was just curious, because this is.
I don't disagree.
It's right. And it makes me go to sleep when I read it, when I'm trying to do things at night, sorry. And also, we kill a lot of trees. I was just curious. No, never mind.
From a timeliness standpoint, doing it once a year, would that put us further behind as far as hindsight? So that would be a negative. That would be a hindsight.
So at this meeting, you're going to see most of the ex-pays associated with fall teaching. And so if you didn't see that, you wouldn't, you're going to see that the second quarter, you're going to see most of it for the spring semester. But I mean, we could do it either.
We're also approving actions that even took place in the previous fiscal year that were completed. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, yeah, about a month of the previous fiscal year. We can run these reports however the board chooses.
That's a document, though. We only get it once a year. It's going to be however, just be a document. I'm not so sure that I have closeness in time to look at these things.
If you think about Regent Brinkley's comment, there would be things that were being approved that we had taken action on that would be over 12 months in the past.
Do we all want to read this?
Hope so.
I mean, do we read it line per line? I mean, I'm just curious.
I do. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm just curious.
And that's how I knew there were items that went back to May. We can discuss an amendment. We want to change the approval amount. If there's a cap or a threshold that we could authorize through a policy. But I would be fine with entertaining that. However,
I think that would be a better way to do it, is over a certain amount or a certain percentage change or something like that.
Could I ask for general counsel opinion? I mean, there's been, we talked about this several times, and there is a requirement, as I recall, that the board approve these.
And in defense of Vice President Holbert, this is an issue that's been going on for over 20 years. So she's simply presenting the personnel actions in the same format that we presented them since I've been here. With new hires, obviously we have new hires, people leave, retire, and so we have to replace them, and that's what the board approves. And by statute, the board must approve any new appointments. Now, we have people start work before the board approves their work, because you meet weekly and we can't have you come in every week and approve new hires. However, if you don't approve an appointment, they stop work, we pay them for what they've done and say goodbye. So you do approve someone's appointment. That's the way we have to do it.
That's statutory.
Yes, that's
what you're saying.
But the statute says the board has to approve all appointments, terms of appointments, compensation, all of those actions. That's just part of what you do, yes.
Committee Chair McKinney. Could we entertain the idea in the full board that we might transition this as a compromise to all electronic and no paper? Do we have to have the paper requirement? Because that might be a compromise initially, so we can work out further details.
Actually, I just like that. The only thing I did was ask a question. And I now know I probably don't need to ask any more questions. So I will do whatever y'all want to do. It was more of, I just was curious. Because we get this and I get confused about what we're doing. Because I'm looking at, I'm reading it, sometimes I get lost in the reading of it and what am I, and then I start back over. And then I have to go here. It was just a question. And just because we've done something for 20 years, Deborah, doesn't mean that it's exactly right either. I mean, there is.
But we do it
opportunity.
that way because the statute requires us to do it that way. And
But
part
that
of,
doesn't
part of
mean
the
you can't
issue
work
is we
around the
make a
statute.
lot of personnel decisions. That's.
Chair, I also, so another question, is there, would it meet statute if we said that all appointments, we could do a bulk approval of all appointments under a certain dollar amount, but that we'd see the individuals listed above a certain dollar amount, would that still meet statute?
You can provide it as an information item through the year. Anything that goes over a certain amount or a certain percentage. All.
I don't think so. I think Deborah's right. I think it's a statute. I don't care if it's $1 or $100.
But that's just timing of when we approve them all. I'm saying we can get the information this year that we want to see, not necessarily every $5,000 expenditure, and then we'll at one time approve all the $5,000 every transaction.
So can I ask, Susan, in your experience at other universities, is this pretty typical?
Up until about 3 years ago at Louisville, the board didn't see anything. Yeah, the new board that came in required it, but that was the first.
Well, I'm gonna speak up and agree with Freddie. I think if we do something in a less timely manner, it's not good. And, I haven't found it works at all. That speaks a little bit to some discussions we've had of how often we should meet or whatever. I think we don't meet enough. I mean, not necessarily to deal with pure pedestrian matters. Or we can discuss meaningful things, the better. So I think this is a perfect.
I think that also in here, increased transparency, making sure that that's available as part of the public record, allowing everyone to see it is another reason perhaps to consider continuing.
I mean, this is usually not an item where we spend a lot of time on. I mean, we sit just pass it along, so I don't think it's a lot of doing this. However, I would be also perfectly fine if this just exists as a, doesn't have to be printed, because once we approve it, what we're gonna do is that paper. You know?
I mean, that's my question, is there a provision that it can be made electronic only? I agree with the burdensome of the printing, and I think we're at a time, space where all of us are reviewing this stuff electronically anyway. If we're not, we probably should be. That would be an amendment to all board materials, frankly, that I would like to see.
I agree, because I forget or don't think about it. Julie's gonna print them out for me, so I print them out at the office too, so I can read them. So I can do it when I travel, in case I can't pull up my computer. So then I have like 2 copies of everything.
I still get a paper and I still buy books.
Sounds like nothing further will change. Keep doing it the same way. Everybody has a better suggestion, bring it up, but we'll keep doing it the same way. All right, any further discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? All right. George and Linda are approving this.
Yes.
All right, FB3 is the next and last item on our agenda, acceptance of the 2019-20 first quarter statement of revenue and expenditures.
So,
I'm sorry, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right. Go ahead.
So I met with Regent McKinney, I guess it was a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about the report. So the report included in your binder is pretty much the same report that you've been seeing for a number of years. I think both Regent McKinney and myself think that it can be improved and be more useful for the board. So the staff and myself will be working on kind of reimagining this report for the next second quarter. And so just some highlights on revenues. Unrestricted tuition fees are just at 50% of the annual budget, and that's pretty much on target with the prior year. State appropriation, the first quarter allotment is 30% of the total appropriation, so on target here. Other revenues, there are a few timing issues. So other than that, and they're going to be catching up in the second quarter, those are on track as well. The net asset allocation, the budget that you approved included the 13 million from the carryover, and the remaining 3 million are budget increases to cover encumbrances from prior year. Excuse me. On the restricted side, grants and contracts are down slightly from prior year, but you're going to see that same decrease on the revenue side, so really no impact to the bottom line. Net asset allocation are budget increases to cover encumbrances carried forward, and then auxiliary. The revenue is down about 6%, primarily enrollment driven. But the good news you'll see on the expenditure side, if you go down to the bottom, expenditures for auxiliaries are tracking 14% below budget. So while your revenue is down 6%, your expenditures are down 14%. Unrestricted expenditures are 26.4% of total budget, and tracking with the first quarter last year. And restricted expenditures are driven by revenue. So as the revenue is received, you spend the funds. So other than that, I have no additional comments.
Does anybody have any questions concerning financial report? No.
Two questions. The first one is, so I can get the support of this last year's support. And the tuition revenue is essentially percentage-wise the same as last year. Last year, we ended up at the end of the tuition shortfall. Is that an indication that we're going to do that again?
I'm tracking that currently with the president and the provost. And the good news is the enrollments are down slightly, most of which we budgeted for. The good news is, and that's headcount only, but if you look at net tuition revenue, we're tracking fairly close to budget, which is really good. So we're recruiting more students from out of state, so our non-resident tuition is over budget. So we might be slightly down, Klaus, but I don't expect to be significantly down.
So you expect that we will not have the same tuition shortfall than last year? We hope.
I'm hopeful at this point, yes.
Second question is along similar lines. Our overall budget is roughly the same, right? And the revenue is about almost down. And so you anticipate that also?
Most of that is in auxiliaries. And again, while the revenue's down, expenditures are down. So I don't expect that to be a problem. There's also assets and timing issues associated with an athletic, and they're going to catch up with us.
Any further questions? All right. I'll ask for a vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. And that is all of our action items, and we have a few information items. First, which is a update on the grant budget model.
Yeah, and Provost Stevens is going to join me. The provost and I are working really closely on both the budget model and the Lucian system project. So Cheryl, like I said, jump in anytime. So just an update on RAMP. This is an extremely important initiative to the university, and I think it's going very well. Cheryl and I and the deans are completely committed to the project. We now have the fiscal year 20 budget model updated in that large spreadsheet that I think you all received a copy of last year. So That's now up to date and will be put on the website for everyone to be able to look at their leisure. I think something that is desperately needed is a university-wide communication strategy around the budget. I think some folks are just not sure where we stand with the project. I think the president made it very clear that we're moving forward full speed ahead. And without a doubt, this will be a parallel year and we will go live July 1. We restructured the governance committee. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, last year Huron recommended a structure that was typical for what other universities do. And I really don't know the details, but we opted not to do that as they recommended. We really struggled with understanding the process, having the committees in place that could do the work and what that work really entailed. It was also a very compressed timeline. So this year, a group of us went and visited NKU and learned that their ramp, their RCM budget model, is about 2 years ahead of ours. So watching what they did, they used exactly the budget model that Huron represented to us, that recommended to us, and it was working great. So we decided to rethink how we were going to do the governance structure and really just adopted one that Huron recommended exactly as they recommended it and as NKU demonstrated it to us. So that's what we did. We ended up with 3 committees, and essentially the way it works is that recommendations for or requests for new funding come up through either the operating allocation committee or the capital allocation committee if it's a capital request. And then beyond that, it would go to the executive budget committee for final approval. And then there's some opportunities to explain in the middle and some screenings in the middle, like highlight priority, mid-priority, low, red, green, yellow, which is what the president likes to say. So anyway, we've got that all in place. We've had a launch meeting and talked about the process, and we're asking for the initial set of requests to come in, what did we say?
Mid-November. And to avoid the compression, we're actually going to start meeting in November. I think the really good news, what I'm really excited about, is we actually issued an RFP, which is closing today, for a new budget technology software that will take that large spreadsheet and put it into a software. I've
like a dashboard.
Yeah, and what's really I'm excited about it. It's going to provide dashboarding capabilities for the deans and the vice presidents. And I like to think this software is actually going to bring the budget model to life. I think it's hard to see the budget model in this spreadsheet. It really doesn't mean a lot to people. So this new software will give us that capability. It will also give us, with Regent McKinney and I talked about, enhanced reporting for the board. And some forecasting and financial analytics.
What's the timing on when are we going to get that?
The RFP closes today. There's typically about 4 companies across the region that have this type of software. The committee will evaluate the RFPs, and I'm hoping to award maybe within the next couple of weeks. And then it'll be up and running probably by January.
I want to go back up to university-wide communication strategy. What's the status of that? How do you see that coming out? I know you haven't developed the strategy yet, but some of the things that I hear is the fact that the university-wide faculty and staff would like to have a lot more communication on what's going on around, certainly a more timely fashion. Can you elaborate on some of that, maybe when that's going to roll out, how you might want to handle it, recognizing that you haven't developed a strategy?
Well, it's interesting because back into the summer, before the semester started, there were announcements made that we are moving forward and it will go live effective pure model July 1st. And still months later, people are saying, are we going to go into the new budget model? So I don't know how to communicate it differently, but we will consider that. We need to definitely make sure it gets down to everyone. A lot of communication does go down through the channels, and that may not be the best way to do it. Some channels are much more fluid than others. So, yeah, yes, the communication.
Chair Johnson, if I can make it clear for everyone, we are implementing the RAMP model. Communication, period. We're at parallel year this year, we'll go live with the full implementation July 1. So communication challenges are created for a number of reasons. Number one is this is incredibly complex. While people want access to the full amount of data, to actually understand that requires some very specific training experience that, to be candid, the general consumer should not have. I think our other challenge is that at the end of implementation, the average faculty member, average staff person really should not feel much of a change in terms of how they interact with their budget. Where the rubber hits the road, and what you see about this software that will be important is this enables deans in particular and vice presidents as well to make strategic decisions based upon revenue flows and expenditure flows. And so as we've talked over and over again, the locus of control among deans and vice presidents, helping enable them to understand how they make strategic decisions that affect their college's revenues is where the most important shifts will be. Department chairs shouldn't have much of an effect on how they do their daily work, but at the dean's level and the vice president's level. And so there is some fear because of the transition we've gone through. At the same time, at the end of the day, I don't, even smaller units that have quote unquote budget responsibility won't be having dashboard responsibility or using on a daily basis the full data. It's just not how it works. It's a management tool.
Provost Stevens was outlining that the committee is going to be structured. I want to point out that as far as faculty concerned, there are two changes which I think are in the long term very beneficial. The first one is that the chair of the Senate is a member of that executive budget committee. That's a really big step because it basically institutionalizes that the elected leader of the faculty is in that executive committee. And I believe the chair of the Finance and Budget Committee of the Senate is on which committee? On the
operating
allocation. And that's also sort of an institutionalized thing. And I think that will, in the long term, connect the Senate, thereby faculty information flow directly to these operating committees. So I'm somewhat optimistic that this will help a great deal.
Well, that's positive.
Yeah, that's a very positive. Yeah.
Chairman. So I didn't have this question for yesterday, so I apologize in not getting it to you in advance. I received a copy of some of the initial meeting materials from earlier this week. The agenda, what was apparently a flow chart and a loose calendar outline. And I'm not going to ask the question that I really want to, but I will ask a question that I think is important related to staff. In non-academic affairs support units, what I saw loosely interpreted was that the unit head would be the initial reviewer. On the support side then, on the support unit side, sorry, who makes this request? What is the unit head? Is it VP? If there's no VP, who does that? How is that handled? Or comma, do you know?
So on the staff side, who is you are in charge of? You are the unit head for your unit, your specific staff unit. You know what's going on in your unit and you can make a request for what whatever resources you believe you need. That goes up from you to the vice president that serves on the council. That might be the unit. I don't remember which unit head we were referring to.
So in this instance, my request would go to the president.
Yes,
For me.
yes.
Okay.
And all academic affairs would go through the deans to me.
So then our
We have to
representative,
have a path.
right, no, it was just point of clarity because
And there was
I didn't
some,
see this as a flow chart.
oh, yeah, there was a visual.
Yeah.
There were some concerns about the timeline, and we have adjusted that. And I don't know that you have those materials. Is that
No,
okay?
Again,
We did spread it out
apologize.
some.
This was a quick give from another party. They voiced some concerns about the initial meeting. And, I think moving forward, based on what I've seen, I have no other concerns or questions. So thank you.
Clearly, it's not time to celebrate yet, but I think we can all take some real satisfaction of what we're seeing, what we're hearing, and when the faculty regent can see optimism, then I can really see it.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for. All right.
So
thank
we're
you, guys.
just gonna, quickly move to another big project that the provost and I are working on. Again, this is an exciting one. So I guess it was probably maybe my second week here that, just by chance, the folks from Aleutian, that's the company that owns our ERP banner, stopped by to see me. And I had some stuff written up on the whiteboard, which was of interest to them. And just looking at how we use our software and how we've implemented our software and our processes and how they work and how they don't work and so on and so forth. And so they started talking to me about a project that they would be willing to help us with. And it was called a strategic alignment plan. And so what Aleutian is going to do is they're going to develop a 1 to 3 year roadmap for us to make sure that our technology is set up in the most appropriate way and works well with our processes. Looking at basically aligning your technology solutions so that they are aligned with your strategic goals of the institution. I think we all know that we can probably build efficiencies across campus through modernizing our technology. So bottom line, that's pretty much what this whole project is about, is looking at our systems, what we have implemented, what we don't have implemented, looking at our processes and making sure that they're all working well together and how we can gain efficiencies. We're also working with Aleutian on potentially looking at going to the cloud as far as our ERP system. And I know this is something that is sometimes difficult for a campus to consider, but I think Cheryl and I have said that basically everyone will be in the cloud within the next couple of years. So we might as well start exploring it now as we're looking at this other technology project. So just some of the advantages of going to the cloud. Certainly security and disaster recovery. And Banner is powered by Amazon Web Services, which is a very powerful tool. Basically looking at transforming your IT staff so that they go from doing system management to more data analytic type work. Maximizing your use of Banner, you stay current with patches, upgrades, and self-service. And it really just provides a modern experience for certainly your students, your faculty, and staff. And I like to say that I think we're doing really well financially. I mean, I think we still have our challenges, but we're making a lot of progress. I think there's risk for the university, and not just this university, but all institutions, is if we don't keep our systems and our technology modern. The students, they're not students like when I was a student. when you ask a student to go sign 6 forms across campus, they just won't do it nowadays. So these type of projects are what we're looking at to streamline the experience for our students primarily. Anything else? And the final slide I have on this is basically if you look at the first diagram there, that's what, on the left. Yeah, on the left, on premise, when you do your work on premise, you're spending most of the triangle in system management and very little time using, working on strategic initiatives. When you move to the cloud, it lessens the time on system management, which allows everyone to focus more on strategic initiatives. I think that's all I have.
Questions concerning the Lucian project?
I'm sorry.
Could I frame this just for a minute? You all recall, you will recall at the summer retreat, we spent some time on risk management issues. And one of the things that Jennifer Miller and I have been talking about is how do we make sure, and George was very much interested in this, how do we make sure the board is updated and we're not just communicating, but also documenting the steps that we're taking in the interim to address those risks. And so this is the state pension update. It is both an informational update, but also designed to show you that we're looking at what is a significant risk for the institution and working to mitigate that risk.
Okay, so in August of this year, Western submitted the official request for documents relating to the cost of leaving KERS. KERS will not provide any cost information until the end of January. WKU, we're participating with an RFP of Eastern and Northern Kentucky, seeking services to help us evaluate the liability, evaluate the employee impact, and evaluate different types of alternatives to exiting KERS. The responses are due at the end of this month. The key date to keep in mind is that March 1st through 30th is basically the maximum period of time we have to evaluate our options. And KERS must be notified by April 30th if we plan to exit the system.
I know this causes great fear among members of the KERS, so I will communicate again what we've communicated multiple times before. That our intent is to do everything to support our employees, to not do anything to negatively affect them, and to do everything in our power to make sure that we make good on the promises that we've made to them, and doing it all in a way that also protects the long-term financial health of the institution.
Okay, thank you for that. Jim, moving on to the internal audit.
But I do have a guest and I want to be mindful of her time, so mine's very brief. You have your agenda item or information item, two projects that we were able to complete for the quarter. And both of those were business operations audits. So by that, we're talking about looking at procurement card compliance, their compliance with travel policies and travel vouchers, and cash handling compliance, among other things that they may be doing in those different areas that we looked at. So the two projects were the Kentucky Museum and also the College of Health and Human Services. And in total, we had 9 recommendations that came out of those. 3 at the Kentucky Museum, all low-rated priorities, and then also the remaining 6 were with the college. And out of those 6, we had 2 that were considered high rated. And those were in summary about segregation of duties and related to cash handling and the way that went more procedures internally, more than just what the cash handling policy has university-wide. So the other things that are on the list, you can see the big projects that we've been working on that are in progress or in some part of the audit cycle right now. And we've also went ahead and moved up the NCAA agreed upon procedures. That's all already been started since we created this agenda item. And then also the pre-planning for the IT risk assessment has started as well. So those things will be going on in the next quarter, and you'll be seeing more of those next time. One other thing I wanted to mention is the ethics compliance hotline. We have a couple of in-person reports that have come in over the last quarter, and just wanted to let you know we do use that system as a full repository place. It doesn't have to come through just the 800 number or on the website. The third party actually does. NavX does that with ethics compliance. But if we have someone come in person, we use that as well. So that's why those numbers went up. We didn't have anyone use the hotline, but we did have a couple of in-person reports that we're doing some preliminary review on right now. This meeting is usually when I do a full year review and let you guys know what we've been working on and where we're at in the audit plan. But because we've also been through a quality assessment review, which I've been talking about that for the past 5 years, I did want to make sure we had time for my guest to speak on that report. You should have a copy of that. If you have any questions, I'll take those, but I was going to go ahead and turn it over to my guest. So with me today is Amanda Brown. I'm going to give some of her credentials. The first and most important one is she is a WKU grad, so with an accounting degree. She is a certified internal auditor. She is the current Institute of Internal Auditors Nashville chapter president. We were not her first quality assessment review. We were not her guinea pig. So she's done a few of these before she got to us. And what else was I going to say about it? Oh, she works. She is currently an internal audit manager at Fruit of the Loom. And I want to personally thank her for taking time, and also for Fruit of the Loom allowing her time to come and do this work so that we, the auditors, can be audited. So I'll turn it over to her.
Good morning. Thank you guys for allowing me to come this morning. Just to give you a little bit of an overview of the purpose of a quality assurance review, the Institute of Internal Auditors has developed a governance framework called the International Professional Practices Framework, IPPF. And a quality assurance review is really meant to make sure that an internal audit shop is following those standards and requirements. And so I conducted this review in July. The review consisted of surveys to the board members and to the president's cabinet. I interviewed the internal audit staff. I reviewed their policies, their procedures, and their work papers. And I compared all of the information gathered to the requirements in the IPPF and then reported on those findings. I believe you have a copy of that report. The results of the review, they did receive generally conforms, which is the highest rating that you can receive. This means that the Office of Internal Audit is following the governance framework with only minor exceptions. So there were also several best practices that I noted. Those are outlined in the report. I will go through the 5 observations that I had. Some of these are related to the standards, but some are also just related to best practices. So the first one is about quality assurance and improvement programs. The Office of Internal Audit does perform some ongoing monitoring about how they're performing against their plan and things like that, but they do not conduct a periodic self-assessment to see how they're comparing to the actual IPPF. So I recommend that they do perform a periodic assessment, and that can be typically every year to 2 years. The second observation is related to the Board of Regents bylaws. So the internal audit charter states that oversight of the internal audit function is with the Finance and Budget Committee of the board, but the Board of Regent bylaws do not state or reference that oversight function. So I would recommend that bylaws be amended to include that oversight function. The third observation relates to conflict of interest reporting. The Internal Audit Operations Manual does provide information about conflicts of interest and not having conflicts of interest, but there was no clear reporting structure. So I just recommend that they develop a reporting structure. I did not find any conflicts of interest. This is just a proactive in the case that something comes up in the future. The next item is related to the Internal Audit Charter. The IPPF was revised in 2017 to include some additional elements, and the charter has not been updated to reflect those changes. So it's just a change in the wording to make sure that it includes the entirety of the IPPF. And then the final item relates to an audit universe. An audit universe is typically used by an internal audit shop to assist in providing a list of all of the auditable entities within the organization. And it can aid as you're planning to make sure that there's no entity within the organization that's being overlooked. And so right now, the Office of Internal Audit does not have an audit universe, but I've recommended that they develop one. Those are the 5 observations. If you guys have any questions about the work performed or the observations.
Anybody have any comments?
It's worth noting, we didn't have that till 2014, and I sit here and wonder how to without. Important function.
Close the business for the financial budget.
Thank you. Anybody like to take a break? I know I moved the student committee meeting forward by 1. Two step out. So if anybody wants to take a break, now's the time. What's everybody's general consensus? I'll take a break. Here's what we'll take a 10-minute break. Come back here. 10 minutes, exactly. See you.
You got your train here?
But I still like to talk.
Be up my way anytime soon? Always there. Just slaving away. What does it do to the next meeting?
By some money, I can go on out. Yeah, no.
I think all my little vacations are done. Small group.
Yes.
Hi, what's your name?
And you never always have work.
Something has exploded.
That's right.
Everybody back? Place. I guess we're going to go ahead and go back to the regular schedule. Regent Henson's not here. Hopefully she'll get back in time. So, Dr. Bell, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Okay, the Academic Affairs Committee does not have a long agenda today. We only have one action item to consider. We'll talk about. The action item concerns approval of some faculty emeritus appointments. And Provost Stevens, do you wish to say anything about any of these today, or save those for the meeting? Do we have any of them here today?
They're not here.
Yeah.
But I do have some descriptions for each of them. Would you like to hear those?
I would.
Okay.
We would.
There are 4. And the first, in no particular order it looks like, are Dr. John Wang, Professor, Education Administration, Leadership, and Research. Dr. Wang's contributions to the university community are deserving of recognition, as is his potential for ongoing contributions to the intellectual and cultural life of the university. He was appointed as a member of the faculty in the Department of Educational Administration, Leadership, and Research in 1987. Dr. Wang is a pioneer in the field of educational administration, serving on the International Council of Professors of Educational Administration and founding their special interest group, Educators Without Borders. Dr. Wang continues to work with the university to enhance inclusivity and diversity through the development of international partnerships and academic programs. His commitment to the profession extends beyond his work at WKU, and his contributions impact the lives of numerous individuals. Dr. Randy Deere was a professor, kinesiology, recreation, and sport. Dr. Deere served as a full-time faculty member at WKU from 1983 to 2014, when he entered transitional retirement. He began as an instructor in the former Department of Physical Education and Recreation and transitioned to an assistant professor in 1992 and more recently to a full professor in 2001. He also served as an assistant dean in College of Health and Human Services from 2005 to 2011. During his career, he left an indelible mark on this institution as an administrator, teacher, and athletic trainer. He was well respected and not only at WKU, but throughout Kentucky through his service to the Kentucky Association of Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. He had a successful 30-year career at WKU. Mr. Neil Downing, Professor, Engineering and Applied Sciences. Mr. Neil Downing dutifully served the university for over 18 years and led the transformation of the Architectural Sciences program to become fully accredited through the Association of Technology Management and Applied Engineering. During his academic career, Mr. Downing routinely engaged students in learning through architectural projects. This was a way for students to get real-world experiences through projects that Mr. Downing led. Dr. Lisa Dill, Associate Professor in English. Dr. Dill served as a full-time faculty member at WKU from 1987 to 2014 when she entered transitional retirement. She began as an assistant professor in the English department in 1987 and earned tenure and promotion to associate professor in 1994. Her primary contribution to the department was teaching linguistics courses to English majors, future secondary English teachers, and elementary and middle grades majors. And that's the 4.
Comments, questions? Not, I'll entertain a motion to approve these.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve these emeritite positions and individuals as the provost is described. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. I would ask that if any of those individuals can be present at our meeting, be recognized, and you can take a moment to make a comment if they'd like. I think since academics is at the heart of what we do, it's always nice if we can put eyes on these people that have distinguished themselves. That is our only action item. Provost Stevens and I had a recent discussion, and she has been bi-monthly putting out some information that hopefully all of us are now getting regularly. And I asked her to take a few moments and describe what she's doing and what's going on academically.
Last summer, President Caboni asked each of his cabinet members to share their goals for this academic year. And as the new provost and vice president for academic affairs, I worked with deans and what I call my E-team, executive team. This is associate vice presidents, registrar, associate provosts, the registrar, and other people who report directly to me. And we developed some broadly impactful goals that direct the current work that we do in the division, but also will extend beyond this academic year. So what I passed around was a list of those goals. Not surprisingly, the overarching goal for the Division of Academic Affairs is student success. Nearly everything we do is tied to student success, either directly or indirectly. In addition, all of these goals are consistent with the WKU strategic plan. So the first goal, post-CAPE, to launch new and improved innovative and market-driven academic programs that will attract a diverse body of undergraduate, graduate, and non-traditional students. So to this end, we've shared a process and timeline for the programs identified for transformation last year through CAPE. There were 57 programs, with an eye toward developing programs that will prepare students for success 10 years from now. We've asked our faculty to engage with experts in the disciplines, as well as consider market trends for employment and future study. A preliminary plan for each program's transformation is due to the Office of the Provost by the end of next month. If this work is done well, this should take a good part of this academic year. Our developing programs will prepare students for 10 years from now, with the expectation that these transformed programs will attract a diverse body of undergraduate, graduate, and non-traditional students. That work is just some programs began that work last spring on their own. Some waited for some direction. So the advantage of that is they're kind of staggered in the timeline, which is good, because we don't want them all running through the curriculum process at exactly the same time. The second goal was to implement efficient electronic curriculum, personnel, and workload processes. Susan spoke about the Ellucian project. This is particularly important for us in academic affairs to function more professionally and efficiently through the use of technology. Our student personnel and financial information system, Banner, has the capability to help us complete essential tasks more efficiently. New modules that streamline workflow processes, faculty load and compensation, and student progression toward degrees are the modules that are essentially most important for us. And they're going to allow employees the flexibility to be more innovative than we have previously had the opportunity to be on this campus. what we really want to do is eliminate some paper processes too. So so happy that you guys are interested or willing to look at some of these reports electronically. Third is to ensure a positive SAC COC outcome. The importance of this goal cannot be overstated. We cannot function as a university without our regional accreditation. In 2021 is WKU's 5th year after the SACS review, so we get a midterm review. And because of the changes in personnel after the last couple of years, we found that the historical knowledge about the SACS review is slim. What we learned 5 years ago, we don't have that historical knowledge now. Nobody who was here then is currently working. So we worked hard, worked with SACS, and are gaining a thorough understanding of the review process and understand the work that needs to be done. There's a conference in December that several of us are going to go to make sure that we have our abilities and ducks in a row. The most important and impactful work that we have is associated with developing a campus culture of continuous evaluation and improvement. Many universities do this. We have to continually look at ourselves, ask ourselves how we're doing, and be willing to and able to change things so that we continually have a progression toward better processes and better outcomes. And ultimately, this is really about student success. And then finally, foster mutually supportive and productive partnerships between the Division of Academic Affairs and the Division of Enrollment and Student Experience, with the ultimate goal of increasing enrollment, persistence, and graduation rates. When I wrote that goal, when we wrote that goal, I had no idea that not only would I be working this closely with not student affairs anymore, it's enrollment and student experience, but also with finance and administration. I spend at least as much time, we in my office spend at least as much time working with Susan and her group as we do with Brian and his. Brian and I and Susan and I meet very regularly and work on our joint endeavors together. Our collaborative work with Ruffalo Noel Levitz and enrollment and student experience, that does not roll off my tongue, has allowed us to bring together faculty and staff from both divisions to develop forward-looking strategic enrollment. In addition, retention initiatives, including living learning communities, cohort learning communities, central and mentor advising, first-year experience, and the Summer Scholars Program places both divisions at the center of WKU's efforts at increasing student success. While not an articulated goal, communicating with campus is a high priority. Every other Monday, updates from the provost are emailed to the entire campus community. I write these messages to be informative and to share the progress surrounding specific initiatives while tying them to the bigger picture associated with our work. Each message has a thread associated with student success and opportunity. There's several months to go this year. Do you have any ideas, thoughts, wishes for things that I can write about? Or there's a lot of Mondays left. I appreciate some input or suggestions. That's my report.
Very good, very good. Any questions or comments? Yeah, I think that helps give everyone, again, the broader view of things as this whole meeting does with Grant and Kate and all the other things that have been part of the strategic planning process that are coming to life and start to bear some fruit. It's an exciting thing to watch.
If I may, Regent Bell, one of the things that I want to add to what Provo shared, and I apologize, Josh, really briefly, is that what she's describing, and that's crucial to our success, is the breaking down of institutional silos and cross-silo collaboration. The best institutions in the country that actually move retention numbers operate across the boundaries of their internal organizations. And so the triumvirate, the provost, the EVP, and the VP for student experience and enrollment, those three folks, or however you say it, ESEs with the shorthand for it, those three folks have to be a team. And for us to have achieved the progress that we've achieved, I think it is in strong measure because of the way in which those organizations, new leadership, the organizations themselves have been collaborating really, really well. It's tough to do. It's easy to get mired in one's own everyday challenges. I'm responsible for this. Because we've shifted the responsibility focus from this is what I have to do to we need more students who are recruited, retained, and graduated. When you put all of your attention there, I don't care what you do every day. Your job is to help recruit, retain, and graduate more students. With that change in focus, you feel the organization shift and how it begins to operate. And so I'm really proud of the work and the stabilizing force that Cheryl has been, but also the collaborative nature of their work.
Very quickly, I don't say this much, and remember, I'm a staff member, not a faculty member. But the extensive and thorough amount of communication that we've seen from the provost office, whether it's, she mentioned the updates, but she didn't mention the 5th week update, the CAPE curriculum review, the diversity, equity, inclusion updates, and on the other updates too. These aren't just glossy statements. A lot of her comments in those are very thorough and in response to concerns that she's had voiced to her. I mean, the amount of information coming from the provost just since August is tremendous. It's thorough, and frankly, she should be commended for it because it's a tremendous amount of information that's coming. And I think the campus community, especially on the faculty side, I can tell you, I speak for myself only. I haven't heard from staff on this, but I'm sure those that receive it and read it are very well informed. So thank you.
The faculty and the staff Regents seeing progress. I think that is real progress. Knowing that we had a thin agenda for the academic committee, I gave myself an assignment. Most of you know I'm reading books all the time, and so I wanted to talk about the latest one, and I recommend it to anyone in the room, but especially the other regents. This segs nicely into what we've discussing, and it has to do with the affordability of college. We all know that's a big topic, along with the cost of healthcare today. And I first heard about this book listening to NPR a few weeks ago. It was on that, and then a review of it showed up in the New Yorker magazine, so I decided I better get it. And it's written by Caitlin Zaloom. The title is Indebted. She's actually an anthropologist at NYU, but the book is about the impact that the cost of college is having on middle-class families. And as we know, there have been some tectonic changes in the middle class in the last 30 years or so. And I'm going to mention just a few things that I gleaned from this book, and I think you'll find interesting. It has a historical account of what's happened with higher education and the funding of it, particularly since World War II, from the GI Bill to on up to more recent federal programs that have basically shifted most of the cost to families, students and families. And with this, as we know, that affects recruitment, retention, graduation rates, and everything else. And it also speaks, Bruce Schulte is going to give us some updates on some of our metrics, but speaks directly to metric number 1 and number 2 of what Bruce will be talking about, which concerns advising and finding aid for students. But one of the things that strikes you right off is that student debt in America right now is $1.5 trillion. And most of that is backed up by the government in the form of loans, although it is on the back of students and families. To put that in perspective, it makes the federal government the largest consumer loaner in America. JP Morgan has $100 billion in consumer loans, and Bank of America $200 billion. So it dwarfs our largest banks in terms of where the money is coming from. And there's all kinds of different programs, from the 529 savings program, which only 3% of Americans participate in, and those are 3% of the wealthiest Americans. So it really doesn't make much dent. And our student aid people, I don't know if any are here now, but they're dealing with this every day, and it's complex and it's confusing, and trying to get students and families the type of aid that they have to go to college is a daunting task, to say the least. Since the late 1980s, when we've seen this problem just balloon, college costs have gone up 4 times the rate of inflation and 8 times the rate of family income, median family. So you begin to understand and realize how it is really difficult. I would encourage any of the Regents, people you know that are going to college, or families you know, ask them what their student debt is and how they have managed to send someone to college. These are our students. And what you'll find out is they've cobbled together resources from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different places. And most of them, yes, are leaving with significant debt that impacts their ability to buy a home, and other things that we think middle-class Americans ought to be able to do. So it's a fascinating read. I won't go into it in any greater depth, but I think certainly was a bit eye-opening to me, and really drives home the importance of the work that we do. I thought of George and C.J. Nichols when I was reading that. There's a chapter on minorities and how it's tougher on them for lots of reasons. And then the work that others do to try to allow Western to fulfill its mission. I think some of the policy changes that have recently been enacted by President Caboni certainly speak loudly to these things, and gave me comfort to think that those were in the right direction as well. So it's a good read. Anyone that reads a book, the academic committee is a good place to have book reviews, and I would welcome anybody else coming up with that. Any questions, comments? I'm telling you, if you'll talk to students or family, people you know in your hometown, and you ask them, what's your student debt? You'll be surprised. It's eye-popping, and it's affecting their lives. And it's students, it's their parents, it's their grandparents, it's their aunts and uncles. Sometimes it's friends. People are really, but the good news is they value a college education that much that they know it is integral to the American dream. So we need to do everything we can to make it affordable. And like I say, Bruce, I'll let you talk about metrics 1 and 2 maybe, but I think we've really ramped up some of those areas. With that, Mr. Chairman, that's all that.
All right, Regent Henson, Student Affairs Committee.
Thank you, and thank you all for being patient with me. I needed to attend a ribbon cutting for a sisterhood project that we funded at the Gordon Ford School of Business, and it was a clothes closet, and there was a little confusion as to who needed to be doing the ribbon cutting, so it was me. you all should have seen me run in heels. Now, I used to do this when I was in college, but it was after I'd had a Big Red and 2 Hostess cupcakes. If you'd seen me running up there, but of course, some policeman, campus cop asked me if I was okay. I was having a medical emergency, and I said no. And so he helped me the rest of the way up. So I went and did the ribbon cutting, and I now need to present Brian Kuster. As soon as he's done, I am rudely going to leave again because we have our sisterhood luncheon, and I am the chair-elect for the WKU Sisterhood. It is a group of women that are very like-minded, and we combine our resources in order to give grant money to other WKU-related organizations. And the best part about it is there are no men. It is all women. It's all women run. And that is probably why it's my favorite organization at WKU. But I just wanted to let you all know when I dart out of here that I'm not trying to do somewhere else because my dance card is full today. I also want to thank you all, and I'm trying to be lighthearted, but I do appreciate all the cards and the thoughts and the texts on the passing of my father. I appreciate you all saying things and stuff. It was very meaningful at the time when I received them. Some of you all don't know how often or how great it was to just hear a kind word or a nice text or something. It was much appreciated. My father grew up here in Bowling Green, and when we did his eulogy, and I had to speak, we talked about my father was the karaoke, had the karaoke ready to go. My dad was a karaoke man, so it was ready to travel. He was also live for the party, but my father was a pilot, and he got that dream when he was at TC Cherry Elementary School in 5th grade. They had career day, and the Eastern Airlines chief pilot came in and did career day. And my father sat in front of Judge Joe Huddleston. And after the gentleman was done presenting, talking about flying, my father turned around and looked at Joe Huddleston and said, "That's what I want to be when I grow up." And my father lived that dream, made a good career out of it, was with Transworld Airlines for 35 years. I have traveled the world, and I have nothing but good things to say about my father and the dream that he had. And he's one of the few people I know that was able to take something he loved and make a career out of it. And not too many people can say that. And I will tell you, he loved flying till the day he died. Even though it was expected, I was not ready. And I just think that just says that life is short. And we ought to just every day live it to the fullest and just sometimes know that life is just a little bit too short. So thank you all. I did that without crying. That's a good sign, guys. Well, now I'm going to introduce Brian Kuster, the VP of Enrollment and Student Experience. And I have to agree with Provost Stevens, that does not roll off the tongue like I wish it would. So I'll hand it over to you, Brian.
Well, first, let me thank Regent Bell because he talked about exactly what I wanted to talk about today and why we have been working on this new scholarship model. And I wish I could say that we coordinated that, but it worked well that we went back to the original agenda because it ties in very well. I think in everybody's packet you received just the printed copy of the scholarship model, but again, I'm very pleased to be here today. And this is a culmination of probably a year and a half of work since President Caboni created the Division of Enrollment Student Experience. We have been working tirelessly as a division, working with the provost and academic affairs and with EVP Halworth and before her Ann Mead on doing things to help students be successful and to remove barriers. Student debt is an issue for our students. The last time this model was revised or adjusted was the fall of 2015. So it definitely was time for us to take a look at that. I want you to know that we used a lot of data to help us make these decisions, but really our decisions were based on how do we increase the access and opportunity for our students. You know, we're increasing access by decreasing cost. You know, we're helping close that gap so there is hopefully less loan debt the students will have to take on. We know that one of the primary reasons that students are not retained is financial. And so we knew that we needed to take a hard look at this model. One of the things that that you'll notice immediately, if you were familiar with the previous model, is that we removed the ACT score for almost all merit and targeted scholarships. By doing that, it definitely rewards the students for their 4 years of academic work in high school, as opposed to whatever score they may have received on the ACT, how many ever times they took that. Because that's a bigger, we know that high school GPA is a better indicator for WKU students for their success than necessarily the ACT score. We also increased the minimum merit from $1,500 to $2,500. You also will see that there's a new band of scholarships that we created. For those students that have a 3.0 to a 3.3, now are eligible for a $2,500 scholarship. That was not, is new with this new model. One of the things that I'm proud of, and again, Regent Bell talked about, is we created additional scholarship opportunities for underrepresented minority students. Western has a compelling interest to have a diverse student body. And again, we know that for our URM students, financial issues are a grave concern. And then lastly, I just want to point out that we are investing over $5 million into this, this new scholarship model. But we're going to, one of the things that we've been looking at and doing for the last year and a half and working with Ruffalo Noel Levitz is helping us be more efficient and effective in how we award our scholarships and who we award it to. So we're not over awarding some students that may have the ability to pay more, and we're not under rewarding students that definitely need that. We also have been privileged because of the Opportunity Fund that's created over 72 new endowments that we have access to, and over $27 million of funds that have been donated to that. And we are doing some discounting of the scholarships. So again, that's just a brief overview. I'm happy to answer any questions, or President Boney, anything you'd like to add.
This is a game changer for how we recruit students at WKU. President Cherry created this institution as a place where anyone who wanted a college degree should be able to come regardless of their family's economic condition. And we have to do everything in our power to help keep our costs reasonable, to target aid to those who are least able to afford a college degree, and most importantly, do everything that we can with the scarce internal resources we have to provide that opportunity to as many people. It changes those students' lives, it changes their families' lives, and it's good for the economic future of our region. And the last is that this is also shifting toward a net tuition revenue model. We've talked for years about how much do we spend on scholarships, and I'm proud that we're going to be more efficient and shift dollars internally to absorb some portion of the additional costs. That we've been able to convince 72 individuals and families to invest in endowed scholarship to help support a growing opportunity scholarship effort. That will continue. We have a $50 million goal, and I have every expectation that through Casey's leadership and the work of philanthropy and alumni engagement will grow that number. But the last is thinking differently about how it is we provide discounts, and the end result from my perspective and from the perspective of the leadership team is changing a focus on full-time equivalent or headcount and focusing on net tuition revenue and focusing on that revenue growth over 4 years. And so I'm appreciative of the tremendous work that was done across enrollment, student experience, our EVP for strategy, operations, finance, and that organization, and also academic affairs. This is truly a team effort. There have been hundreds of folks involved in this, and we use the best in the country to help us put it together. I will tell you, my president colleagues at sister institutions are amazed at this. They're amazed for a couple of reasons. That we took a leadership role and did it first in the Commonwealth, number one, and number two, that we were able to do it as quickly as we were. And so this will be a competitive advantage for us. We must execute our recruitment plan to make sure it does what it's supposed to do. But at the end of the day, This is a tremendous, tremendous move for WKU, our prospective students, and our whole region.
Does anyone have any questions? No?
It's not a question. I'd just like to say one of the other hats that I wear on this campus is I'm also a WKU Spirit Master. And that gives me the opportunity to give campus tours each and every week. And I get to see firsthand the students that are coming through that this is going to benefit. And I've heard nothing but absolute positive things about this model. And I would really like to commend President Caboni and all the staff for taking this initiative. You know, the only downside that I've heard from students is they wish they could have it now too. And I think that's really telling from a student's perspective. And as long as we're a student-centered university, if you're hearing those things from students, then you know you're doing the right thing.
Anyone else?
I had a meeting just trying to get all my questions.
Okay. Are you good?
I'm good.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have anybody?
I've talked a lot really quickly. I rarely receive messages from my hometown about events on this campus. I'm in Pulaski County, Somerset. And I receive more messages and comments from people that I went to high school with who have college age, almost college age students. It really dates me a little bit. It's getting ready. And the idea that this cloud of the ACT has been lifted from over their head, they feel like they have children now that will be more successful and they can better plan for college, not having to worry about that cloud. And that has been a consistent message that I've received since this announcement came out frequently.
And the last little bit to add to that, some of you all saw me here on Monday, and I brought a young lady in to tour WKU because I'd really like her to attend Western. And we were going through the whole tour, and we went up, and I got to finally see the information session that they offer at the Alumni Association building up in the auditorium. And they have presented this, and I will tell you, all I heard was oohs and ahs. And so I followed up with the other two people. Actually, I've had 4 people. Today, I have a tour going on right now as well for another young woman who's interested in Western, and we're recruiting her pretty heavily. The first 3 have come back, and we're talking about different aspects of the scholarship, whether lowering the ACT scores and also of the help that it was going to provide. But it really didn't hit me until I was sitting there and watched on the big screen talking about the assistance and hearing people in the background saying, oh my gosh, that's great. Oh, how cool. And I just think that, you know, when you think about the economy, you think about the future, we have students, and this I believe will help with retention as well. Because if you don't have the family support at home and you don't have the financial resources, it's hard for that family to encourage you to come back a second semester. So you end up having debt that you then go home and have to figure out how you're going to repay. And then at some point in time, they have a minimum wage job possibly that they can't pay that debt back. Then it does trickle down to the whole economy. It affects whether they can buy a house, a car. Also too, at some point in time when there's bad debt, the taxpayers end up having to take care of it. So if we're doing a proactive stance and making this available for our students, I can't imagine what this is going to do. And being the first in the Commonwealth, that's quite something to be said.
How do these scholarships carry forward into their sophomore, junior years?
As long as they maintain at least a 2.5, they will receive these, because that's the other piece that we've noticed in the past is a student would come in and may get a scholarship. And normally their high school GPA is higher than what their college GPA will be. And so they drop below that band and lose that funding, and then they have to drop out. And so again, we're looking at different ways that as an institution, we've created barriers for students to their success. And if we know they can graduate and we're not accepting them if we don't think they can, then we want to make sure they can be successful. And so taking away that scholarship would be detrimental to them. So as long as they're making progress and have at least a 2.5, we're going to continue their scholarship.
Anyone else like to make any comments? Chair Johnson, I'm done with my committee report.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I'll see you guys later.
All right, let's move on to the last committee meeting, executive committee. We have one action item. That's the approval of the athletic employment contract. Head coach and men's women's cross-country track programs. I don't know if it's presented or not, but I will entertain a motion for approval of that contract with the committee. Final second. Okay. We have a motion second. Is there any comments, questions? Hearing none, then I'll ask for approval. All in favor of approval? Motion signify by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. We have 3 informational items, and we'll start with the strategic plan update with Dr. Bruce. Hello.
Thank you all for sticking with us for so long. I think I have a PowerPoint. Here we go. So I just want to give an update on what's happening with the implementation of the strategic plan. You've obviously heard a bunch of good news already today, and I'll try not to dwell too much on those same items. Just to give people who haven't been here the whole time for this process, I'll give you a quick update where we are now. As you know, we have the 3 areas of the strategic plan that are both online, available online, and in hard copy. And just to define some terms briefly, goals are what we want to attain, strategies are our paths to get there, and the metrics that I'll primarily talk about today are the indicators of our success. So real briefly, we started this when President Kamoni came in, formed a strategic planning set of committees, had a lot of people involved, moved through this and achieved approval by this body in 2018, and then it rolled out in the fall of 18. In the spring, President Kamoni asked me to chair an implementation committee to help move the strategic plan from sort of the web and the paper copy to actual action, and make sure that that action is consistent across different bodies and that there's collaboration that you've already heard about today working so that we can move forward in an efficient and fiscally intelligent manner. So this was done by people actually applying from the university community to be a part of this committee, and then we formed this committee that still exists today, and I was asked again to be the chair of it. So last spring, we started our initial meetings. We formed an executive committee and have a variety of committees that you see up there. Primary one that we wanted to move on as quick as possible was a metrics committee. And so that work started last spring. And we also at the same time were interviewing leaders at WKU about the strategic plan to receive as much input as possible from as many different areas as we could. And some of those leaders have changed, and we've continued to interview the new people in those positions. So we started to focus on sort of 3 major areas, and that's the metrics themselves, the coordination of activities, as I already talked about, and then the reporting of those. And this is part of that reporting nature here today. I want to thank, besides all the people that have been involved in this all along, Greg and Tuesday for co-chairing from the EC, the metrics committee, because they met throughout the summer with groups to work on the metrics of our students, our Hill, and our community and beyond. And you should have, each of you, a compilation of the 15 major metrics that we've come up with so far. So what they started with was subgrouping into these 3 areas, coming up, looking at the goals that were in the strategic plan, and you have the numbers there, and then came up with as many reasonable metrics as they could draw from. And they're drawing this not only from the people sitting in the room, but from the white papers that go back to the original strategic plan, which are still available on the website. If you would ever like to go look at those, we can point you in that direction. So there were 85 metrics that were created initially. And then what we went through is a process of winnowing down to 15, and we may get up as close to as many as 20 in the end. But these are the metrics right now that you have before those, and that the president today released to the university community through his message. And these are the ones that I'll talk a little bit more about. Some of these metrics are largely quantitative metrics, and some of the goals that are in the strategic plan do not lend themselves necessarily to a quantitative metric. So let me just briefly run through a few of the qualitative things that are going on. I'll try not to dwell too much on the ones that have already been talked about, like the scholarships, which is obviously immense. You've heard about, Brian talked about the strategic enrollment plan. So that's to serve our full constituents. That's ongoing. We should have something concrete by the end of the spring term there. Global Learnings, John Sunnygaard is heading that up and making a lot of changes and connecting to a lot of aspects across the university and the broader community. And remember, our community is not just Bowling Green, it's not just Warren County, it's not just the counties of Kentucky, but it goes across the globe. And so he's very important in help leading that movement. And then we also have great things going on with athletics. Todd left, but I've been meeting with him and with alumni ambassadors. Just a few updates on that one. It's just amazing what's going on with our alumni right now. We have over 100 alumni involved in helping to advise students. We have created our own Topper Pride alumni chapter for helping students that fall into the Pride area navigate their career messages and pathways. We're doing things with the international students. So the alumni are really becoming an even more important part of the college community for our students, which I think is just going to be extremely helpful in their success. At the Hill level, we consider this, or the faculty, the staff, the administrators, all the people that day in, day out are here to help with student success. We are the human resources helping to lead a market analysis of employee salaries and benefits. We're continuing to look at sustainable practices and healthy practices, not only our wellness program, but as you've probably heard, we will go tobacco free starting in January, which is a great strive forward for the health of our community. And you've certainly heard a bit now about RAMP. And so I think I can honestly say this, that we will adopt the RCM model in July of 2020. Not out of bounds on that one. So, and then the provost talked about the CAPE process. We're developing a comprehensive advising program. This again really is an important stride. Students can go on to TopNet now. They can click on a certain link in TopNet and they can see their 4-year plan that is adopted to them. It incorporates what they have taken already and what their goal is to take. It's like a program of study for our grad students at the undergraduate level. It's going to be immensely helpful to have them continue down and get graduated in hopefully 4 years, certainly by 6 with changes of majors and things like that. Of course, the goal is always 4 years. And then we are actively instituting our 5-year diversity, equity, and inclusion plan. I'll talk a little bit more about that with our quantitative metrics. So in terms of the quantitative metrics, I'll kind of move from the bottom up. I just wanted to highlight that our athletics program is not only doing great things when they play the sports, but they're doing great things with the students themselves. And these are metrics that they have to meet. The first one for the NCAA, and they consistently do that. It's not so much the number above 930, it goes up to a number of 1,000, but we have several teams that actually hit 1,000. So that's an important progress report metric that they need to do to stay in the NCAA. The graduation success, this is a graduation rate of success metric. It's slightly different from a straight graduation rate because it incorporates transfers in and out. But it's a very high number, and it's something that as a university we should strive for all our students. And so the goal here is to maintain this number and not put additional resources in, but to save those resources for the rest of our student body, but to make sure that this doesn't slip. It's a very high metric, and we want to help them maintain that metric. I'll just touch on one with our Hill in terms of quantitative numbers. This has to do with awards received, not expenditures. And so we've seen both the dollar amount over from the first year, the baseline year, to last year, fiscal 18 to fiscal 19. We're increasing our dollars asked for and our dollars received. So that's a good sign if we can keep that moving. And that's something that, again, that mantra of an applied research university that also looks at the pure science component is very important for our institution. It's very important for our faculty, and it's critical for our students to have hands-on experiences through faculty obtaining these type of awards. And then I'll finish up by just talking about a number of the different metrics that fall under our students. And I won't take up too much of your time, but the first one that Dr. Bell talked about, financial counseling, we are up from 74.7% in the baseline year to 80.3%. That is almost 14,000 students that are being counseled financially out of essentially about 17,400. That's very impressive that this is going on, and this is clearly going to continue to help our students see their way financially through to graduation. We also have an opportunity fund with a goal of 50 million, and we're over halfway there. So that's great. As you know, that's a fund that can be used to help students out who have financial needs, everything from a car breaking down to they can't pay for their books this semester. They can apply for money to help them get through rough times and keep them in school rather than having to leave, go get a job, and then try to come back later. Our STEM plus health degrees are up. The number of women involved in these degrees are up, and our underrepresented minorities are up. So this is a continual bar that we want to keep working on. And of course, this also helps with state performance funding. We've seen an increase in retention from baseline to second year, and I believe the president, when he talks, may talk about what the outlook is this year as well. We've seen graduation rate go up, and we've seen the number of degrees for graduate professionals go up. So I hope, have really turned the corner now, or we're starting to implement these things. And I just have to say, from the point of view of my position, it is so great to see so much of the campus community working together for moving all these things. It's not just one group's responsibility. It's a collective, cohesive unit moving us forward and sort of breaking down those silos. And that's just really important for our success. So the next immediate steps regarding the metrics themselves is I'm going to be bringing these to the various leadership bodies across campus. I have a meeting set up with the executive committee. I've got a meeting set up with the staff senate, with the SGA. That'll be coming up in one of the future Tuesdays. CAD will be looking at them again at a future meeting. So what we want to do is make sure that everybody can buy into these metrics, that they don't see an impediment for being able to move forward. Obviously, not every metric affects every unit on campus, but where it does, it's important to have buy-in. And again, we still have a few more to develop. And part of that is because the strategic enrollment plan won't be finished up until the spring, and they will give us some knowledge about some other metrics that we may need to include, or some that we have that may need to be modified. So with that, thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Comments?
I'll make a comment. 2 years ago this month is when the strategic planning process really began in earnest, and Bruce took over as a co-chair of that, and to see him now doing this follow-up work, he has been immersed in our strategic plan, truly immersed for 2 years. And he's done a great job, and having served on the steering committee with him on that, I saw him manage personalities, manage ideas, and for us, 2 years later, to be looking at improvement already, I'm getting some chills here. Bruce has done a great job, and I thank you. Best.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Our next information item is President's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is just going to be an opportunity to more formally make sure that there are things that you all need to hear about that perhaps weren't talked about during the rest of the meeting, or things that I want to share. And I appreciate the opportunity to do that. You've heard today about our significant and substantial scholarship revisions. You know now that we're making measurable, significant progress on quantitative measures on retention. That will continue into this fall. I can't give you the numbers yet, but we're going to be up again. Degree production, fundraising, and student engagement metrics. If you haven't seen, the First Year Village is coming out of the ground on South Campus. It may be taller than I had in my head or in my mind, but it's there. So take a look at that if you get an opportunity. Hallam Library is not only empty, it is just about gutted. At some point, we're going to have a walk through there to show folks the progress on the WKU Commons. Yesterday, I had the great good fortune to be out at the site visit on our McChesney Field campus. to look at the Mary McChesney Kindle Pavilion unveiling. That's a facility you all had approved long before I arrived with a gift of 140 acres from the McChesney family. Hardin Field McChesney was a professor here, and his family had a presence on this hill for 62, 64 years, both as faculty and as students. And they've made a gift of that farm and that property to us. The pavilion will provide an opportunity for our kinesiology, health and sports students, and many other students to have a place to go and experience what is a tremendous space. Yesterday, the ladybugs were out in force. And so we'll figure out when they're not and maybe go for a field trip there sometime. You may have seen this week, we launched LifeWorks at WKU. This is a continue-on of the work that's happening in the CEC, our Kelly Autism Program, helping young people who are on the spectrum receive their college degrees. We know that at age 21, that you fall off of the support system. And this is an extension of that work to help young people who have job preparation to be ready to live on their own, to go to work, to fit in and have the social skills to be successful there. Both of these efforts are completely funded through philanthropy. And so I just wanted to thank the donors and their families. We celebrated Keys scholarships this year. Many of you may or may not know that in the past 20 years, WKU has been the recipient of over $185 million in Keys funds through the Kentucky Lottery. 55,000 students who've come through WKU have received those scholarships. We had an incredibly successful homecoming. For those of you who saw the photographs, moving the Big Red Roar to the top of the hill and ending the parade there, even though it was harder to get to the top of College Street than the bottom of the hill, it made for a successful celebration, and we'll continue to evolve that in coming years. We're pursuing, obviously, an aggressive expansion of our marketing and recruitment efforts, especially in Middle Tennessee, to continue that progress. Our Talisman students were recognized with 7 Gold Circle Awards, and Harold and Talisman again have 3 Pacemaker finalists this year. We had our most successful Parents Weekend ever, with 1,300 folks attending the barbecue, over 3,000 tickets purchased for the football game, and boy, wasn't that a good game. Lastly, WKU and Davis County have re-established our partnership. A decade into the future, we're going to work together on making sure WKU Owensboro is vibrant and engaged in that community. This year, we had a record number of Gatton students who were named National Merit semifinalists, 23, a record for Gatton, and you heard about our remarkable athletic graduation rate. I talked at convocation about turning a corner. And folks, if you don't feel that, you're not feeling very much right now, because as an institution, the entire university has worked together, pitched in, and we're making significant progress year over year, year over year over year. We're going to continue that into the future. So with that, thanks for the opportunity to provide a bit of update on what we've been working on.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions, comments? President's report? Okay, the last item, information item, I guess, starts with me. Part of the board responsibility, and that is delegated to the executive committee, is to do an evaluation of the president. It sort of takes a two-pronged approach. One is a self-evaluation. Right now, and advise everybody that last Friday, something about a week now, I sent out the president's annual report to the board, as is required, the bylaws, and in compliance with the bylaws, that outlines what the institutional goals are, and the president's success or achievements with respect to those particular goals. Now, that was a 23-page report. I'm not going to sit here and go through that. I hope everybody's had an opportunity to look at it. The second phase of that I've just handed out was to do an evaluation summary. And the summary identified 5 specific areas: recruitment, retention, philanthropy, WKU experience, budget stabilization, and community engagement. I think this speaks for itself, and everybody has pretty well seen a lot of the results. We look at the endowed scholarships. We look at the graduation highest we've had last year, or last school year. We look at our recruitment and retention. We have certain goals that we're trying to accomplish, and we are actually moving very quickly toward those goals. I think, Bruce, you probably just identified a lot of those things that we've targeted and that we are moving toward. Clearly, it turned the corner. Budget stabilization. Again, this is the ramp model, or RCM as well, and it's moving into a very positive area. Difficult at first, and it's not easy to implement, especially when you change, but it's moving in that regard. And we opened ourselves up for more community engagement within our 27 county area, our service area, and around the Commonwealth as well. I can speak to Lexington to a certain degree, as Linda can. Outstanding op-ed piece in the paper last week. So, we're knocking on the door and people are seeing us. I don't think it benefits anybody if I sit here and try to review everything here. But you've had an opportunity to take a look at the president's evaluation, and I'm just so amazed at it. We really are moving in that right direction. So I'll kind of open it up for any questions or comments that anybody may have, either me or
Just a quick comment, you spot on in your comments, and Mr. President, thank you for outstanding service, performance.
Go back to the recruitment process and what we were looking for a new president, and he's filled the bill in every one of them, including, thank goodness, having a sense of humor, which you have to have to survive.
Fortunately, it's very special.
But yeah, Dr. Bonnie has met all of them and exceed them, and I think we're really starting to see results that only compound as time goes on. Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else?
If I may, these are always uncomfortable because while I may visibly get the credit for it, the reality is that this is thousands of people across this institution doing the work. And so I hope that everyone who sees or reads those metrics understands that each of them has a role to play in that success. And sometimes I get mentioned, but it's not just me. But I appreciate it on behalf of everybody who does that work. Thank you.
Being able to develop a cohesive team is an art form in itself, though, and as we all know and see every day, leadership does matter.
I agree, but I appreciate your reference to those who work with you and committees and all of the staff. I think everybody has a part, small and large. All right, with that, we'll start to wind down unless there's other comments. Let me give a quick statement on two things. First, last night, Regent Higley and I had a social and dinner engagement with faculty, with Julie Shadon, the chair of the Faculty Senate, and people that she invited, which was her, I guess, her executive committee, or I guess it's there, with chairs of the various departments. And the purpose behind that meeting last night was to, first of all, kind of get to know them, because as a board, we don't. And secondly, was to listen. Nobody had to sit in the room and agree or disagree, but we all listened. I thought they listened to Freddie and I. I believe Freddie and I listened to them. some significant ideas. For example, why don't we have more engagement with the faculty senate in terms of maybe Regents just showing up for meetings? I was reminded that they were open, and you can go. Nobody has to ask you any questions. You can sit in the back of the room. So I might go with Klaus. So, maybe not November, but the December one. I thought that was a good idea. May not necessarily want to say everything they've got to say, but opening debate and trying to find a compromise is the right thing to do. So, and Jennifer, you're up next. So next time. It's an idea to open up, to communicate, and actually takes off the spin from what you've started. So I want to tell you how positive that was last night, and see if we can't build on it. Freddie, you want to add anything to that at all?
Yeah, I think you said it well, Gil. It was an excellent opportunity to start building a better bridge of communication and listening.
Yeah.
I was very, very excited and very pleased with our encounter.
That was too. All right, let me give some meeting schedules for 2020, and I'm going to come back to the first one, January 31st, which is our next committee meeting. But let me come back to that in a minute. Did we pass these out?
Yes, everybody's
Okay.
got
Well, there they are. March 6th is first quarterly meeting. April 10th committees. May 10th second quarterly. June 26th will be the special budget approval committee meetings. August 6th, the retreat. Back to that in a minute. August 7th, the third quarterly meeting. October 23rd, committee meetings, and then the fourth quarterly meeting will be December 11th. A couple of Regents have said to me that we get more out of, I'll say, retreats or mini retreats than maybe we do committee meetings. And I'm still trying to find a way that, we kind of coordinate that and expand on the information. In addition to that, Regent Bale got in touch with me about a concept that started at Kansas State University. I want to make sure I got this right. Adapted leadership.
Adaptive leaders.
And that these people had visited this campus and been here. Leaders from around the Commonwealth, including some people from Lexington, Linda, like Jim Gray. And it's something that maybe we ought to look at. And I agree with Regent Bale on that. The second aspect of it is another thought process about engaging past Regents in conversations about what their ideas, what they see, and more importantly, if we can engage them, maybe that helps build contributions in our capital programs, et cetera. I don't know if it does, but engaging these people who have served physically at the university, bringing them back in and having conversations. So if we can try to work that out, we're going to take a shot at January 31 as a quote mini retreat and committee meetings. Maybe we won't have as large a committee agenda that will allow us to do that on the 31st, and then maybe circle it around with the previous Regents that are still here. Not necessarily in Bowling Green, but wherever they may be, certainly be invited. So that's the target of January 31. I know you've got a tough schedule on the front end and the back end of that, as does Freddie. So we'll see if that may change a little bit. We'll try to figure that out. But anyway, right now it's January 31. So anybody got a comment on that schedule or any thought process about a mini retreat? It will be identified primarily through adaptive leadership if we can get the people here. Weather will be a problem maybe, but we'll address it. So I don't have anything else unless anybody, am I supposed to say, oh, you got to say it, thanks, I already did that. Anything else? Then we're adjourned. Oh, lunch is being served. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.